Roya Hakakian is an Iranian. She has been in this country for 25 years. She grew up in a Jewish family in Tehran. Roya, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Where do you think this is going?
I think this is going in the direction of a revolution. A lot of people are hard-pressed to call it a revolution, and they are sitting on the fence and wondering exactly when or how it's going to happen. But the evolution of the past 30 years in Iran make it extremely clear to me that this is the inevitable part of this is the inevitable destiny of the past 30 years and the direction in which things have been proceeding in Iran. Whether it happens next week, next month, or whether it will take a year or two is unclear. But major change must come to Iran, because there is no way that you can keep the women in Iran, the youth in Iran, content any longer.
Well, you have many contacts there. Are you having difficulty getting through to people, getting information? My sense of it is that we in the West really don't know very much about what's happening there.
That's right. I mean, oftentimes I get information from inside Iran on my Facebook page, and I watch the news on the evening just to see what the lag time is, how long it takes for what I hear through Facebook, what I hear through Twitter or email to appear on major media, and there generally is some lag time, of hours, sometimes even half a day or 24 hours. What I am hearing is that there is a great deal of blood on the streets. In fact, I got an email from a female friend vicariously through an intermediary who says, I'm really scared. There's simply a lot of blood on the asphalt on the street, and they didn't hold anything back in cracking down at the demonstrators in the past 48 hours.
Do you have a sense that there are going to be more demonstrations now, or do you think that part of this is peaked?
Absolutely. I think what I'm confident about is that there's going to be more show of discontent and dissatisfaction. Now, whether it will take the form of people storming the streets once again, or whether it will be in the form of people sitting on the sidewalks holding candles, as they did a couple of nights ago, to commemorate Neda Agha Sultan's memory, or whether they will just place candles in the windows of their homes to remember the fallen individuals, the fallen victims of these past few days, is unclear. But what I'm certain is that the lack of satisfaction, and the disenchantment will go on. It will take on as many forms as people can creatively come up with.
How bad has it been for people in Iran in recent years?
Well, I was astounded by the fact that many journalists, reporters, pundits were looking at Iran in the past few years and calling it an incomplete democracy, an emerging democracy, because anyone who has really looked at Iran and followed the state of human rights, civil liberties, activists, newspapers, and journalists knows very well that Iran is the farthest thing there could ever be from a democracy. And so one can say that in 1997, when Khatami came to power, when President Khatami came to power in his landslide, Iran did experience a period of openness, and newspapers started to flourish. But even at that moment of openness, that moment after 20 years since the Iranian Revolution of 1979, that we can point to and say, here was an opening. The Ministry of Intelligence came up with a parallel detention centers in Iran. There were official detention centers, but people were disappearing into these other covert prison systems. And so there was always a shadow government, despite who was in power, who was president in Iran, that was operating. And that's the very scary part of Iran that is at full display right now.
All right, Roya Hakakian, thank you so much for that insider's point of view.